Okay, we keep reading Metis, the octopus and the olive tree. We are up to something missing. Eavesdropping was an easy way to pick up words in English. You could also learn all kinds of facts and information. Metis found. One day she was sitting within earshot of some Skippy girls. One of them, Big Julie, noticed the shy, dark-eyed girl picking at the olives and white cheese in her lunchbox. "What's your name again?" said Big Julie, planting herself in front of Metis. "Oh yeah, I remember now, Metis. Hey Metis, want to bring your rollerblades to the car park after school?" Metis was mortified. What was Big Julie talking about? "We could probably lend you some if you haven't got your own," Big Julie offered, her round face beaming down at Metis. Metis tried to focus her attention. Big Julie's shaved head and row of earrings winking round the edge of one pink ear were distracting. "I don't think so," she said. "Thank you." "Suit yourself." Big Julie shrugged and walked back to her friends. The lives of Skippy kids were quite mysterious to Metis. What they ate and drank, the clothes they wore, the games they played, and where they went in their spare time were all things that Metis set out to discover more about. Sometimes she even fantasized about being a Skippy girl, reading romance stories and sneaking out with makeup on, listening to music on a Walkman, having a bicycle to ride, and what was it Big Julie had? Some rollerblades. And new jeans carefully disguised to look like old ones, and joggers like Big Julie's friends. She wouldn't shave her hair, though. Her parents would disown her, and besides, she didn't want to look like Big Julie. But going to the video shop instead of struggling with homework might be fun, thought Metis. In fact, she felt like two people inside one skin, at times. The girl from the island and the modern girl she sometimes felt she was about to become. Who would have dreamt of such a thing back in the village? It was scary to think of all that modern freedom, though. Some of the girls in Metis's class went out without their parents and seemed to do whatever they liked at the weekends. On the island, families were never like that. Children helped their parents, and parties were for everyone. Metis overheard her father commenting on this new state of affairs. "Why, they have children, the Australians," he growled, his eyebrows twitching fiercely. "Today in my taxi they smoke. They swear they got 5 earrings in their ears. That's only the boys. And the girls, they got no hair. What a country! Irini, we got to be careful. Here is dangerous for Metis." It was the longest speech Metis had heard her father make about his fears for her. Her own fears were different, private, and too painful to confide to anyone, in case they turned out to be true. Metis was afraid that she would not find a real friend in this unfamiliar place. Now that there was no contact with Yaya, who would understand her? Although Irini was loving and kind, she could not always read her daughter's mind. Christina was nice too. Metis liked her a lot, but Christina could not make up for something Metis felt she had lost. Metis couldn't tell whether it was Yaya she grieved for, or part of herself that had been left behind on the island, though what part of it was she couldn't say. But one thing was certain, something was missing from this new life. A letter from Yaya. The first day of school in Australia had been an ordeal Metis wished only to wake up from. The large concrete buildings, the uniforms of the hordes of children confused her. There were as many children in Metis's classroom as there had been in her entire school on the island. Never in her life had she felt so out of place, and having to make an attempt to speak English only made it worse. The sounds didn't match any objects Metis recognised, and she felt silly with her face contorted trying to speak the English way. She longed to be back in the whitewashed island schoolhouse, with the blue and white flag flying in the courtyard and views of the harbour from the windows. She closed her eyes and saw the barefoot, shabbily dressed island children crowded at the scratched and scabby desks, reciting their tables and spelling aloud, or scraping unaccustomed pens across a clean white page, lowering their heads as Karina Maria thundered her instructions, threats and reprimands. That night Metis was nauseous and feverish. Irene thought she must have caught a virus from the other children, but Metis didn't believe that for a moment. "I want Yaya," she sobbed. Irene felt desperate. "Metis, don't cry like that. Here, let me sing to you." And cradled in her mother's arms, Metis listened to the island songs until, still sniffling and hiccuping from time to time, she finally slept. As Irene arranged her daughter's covers and tiptoed from the room, her face was grave, and her heart felt like a burden in her chest. Had they done the right thing, leaving their poor island to come and build what they hoped would be a better life on the other side of the world? As Metis struggled to get used to her new school, she couldn't help thinking of Yaya. Even though Yaya had not suffered from homesickness and not understanding a strange language for the first time, Metis realized how Yaya must feel, not being able to read and write while other people could. Things had been different when Yaya was growing up. Most children went to school for only a year or so, and sometimes girls didn't go at all. They learned how to sew and cook and weave and spin instead. When Yaya received a letter from Australia or the United States or Canada, she would ask Thea Anna or Theo Stavros to read it to her. And when she wanted to send a letter, she would tell Thea or Theos what she wanted to say so they could write it for her. "Dear Metis," Thea Anna wrote for Yaya. "How lonely it is in the village without you. How we miss your smiling face. We are whitewashing the cottage, and soon it will be time to bake the Easter bread and dye the eggs and make everything ready. I hope you haven't forgotten how to do these things. A sprawler has twin kids, both white like her. You should see the spring flowers now. There are poppies and irises and anemones everywhere. Theostavros has a new donkey. His name is Kyr Mendios, the same as the old donkey. What is it like in Australia? Tell me about your new village. 1,000 kisses. Yaya." Yaya knew so much, thought Metis. It seemed odd that she couldn't read or write. Her stories were far more interesting than anything Metis had ever read in books. A photograph. On the top corner cabinet in Metis's new home were photographs of people from the island. It was like Yaya's house in reverse. There was a blurred photo of Yaya taken several years before at an island wedding, and snapshots of Thea Anna and Theostavros and their children Mina and Vasilis. Closest to the icons, and always flanked by sprigs of rosemary, was a photograph that contained a clue to the destiny of Metis and her parents. It showed her two elder brothers, Nikos and Manolis, who had been lost at sea with their father fishing kayak 6 years before. It was something that could happen in the islands at any time of year. A Borini or Meltemi or Sirocco would blow up out of nowhere. They must be the names of storms. And the voracious sea would snatch the island sons away, as it had been doing ever since there had been fishermen. Nikos and Manolis were never seen again. The little boat called Ikaros, their father's livelihood, was swallowed by the tempest, and no traces of his sons were found. After the customary time of mourning came to an end, Metis was told her parents wished to leave the island. Although they still had family there, their sorrow was unbearable. Everything in their surroundings seemed to magnify their grief. Kostas knew they'd have no peace unless they left. Even in Australia, Metis heard Irene weeping for her drowned sons, and asking why they had been taken from her. Kostas would console her at such times and hold her in his arms and tell her not to weep. God has his reasons, he would say, but he was grieving too. Irene and Kostas lit candles every Sunday for Metis's brothers lost at sea. Because of the tragedy that had changed her parents' lives, Metis sensed there would be no going back to the island. They did not wish to be reminded of their loss. They wanted to turn their backs to the sea.